The stars bled that night. Across the silent expanse of the Milky Way, the fires of dying worlds flickered like the pulse of a heart struggling to beat one last time. Earth was gone. Mars was glass. Luna had become a cratered tomb. Humanity's once great colonies lay in ruin beneath the relentless precision of the Karth Dominion, a species of machines so ancient, even time itself seemed to bow before their will. They did not invade for conquest or greed. They came because it was in their design to erase imperfection. And to them, humanity was the last imperfection left. The final broadcasts from Sol were little more than static and screams. Yet among the ashes, whispers of resistance remained. Survivors from the scattered fleets gathered near a dying red dwarf star, its faint light reflecting off the scarred hulls of ships held together by stubborn hope. There were no illusions left. This was not a war to win. This was the end of a story that had begun with fire and curiosity. Humanity had always reached too far, too fast, too hungry for understanding. But even now, standing at the edge of annihilation, they refused to go quietly. Admiral Recour watched the last transmissions from Earth replay on an old terminal. Children playing in sunlight that no longer existed. Oceans blue and alive. The laughter of a species that had believed tomorrow was infinite. She closed her eyes, not to grieve, but to remember what it felt like to belong to something fragile and beautiful. Around her, engineers and scientists whispered about one final plan, a project conceived not for survival, but for vengeance wrapped in meaning. Project Lazarus. It was madness, but so was the idea of humans ever giving up. The Car fleet was still advancing, precise and cold. Every human ship destroyed added to the Dominion's archives of conquest. Yet for all their intelligence, they could not comprehend why humans continued to resist when logic dictated surrender. They had no word for defiance born from love. No code for sacrifice made in the name of memory. To them, the humans' last stand was statistical noise, an irrelevant delay. But inside that noise, humanity was building something the machines could never predict. Purpose. Food was gone. Water recycled until it tasted of metal and despair. Yet the people worked. They stripped their ships for materials, tore down reactors to power the unknown. Children were taught not lullabies but code, ancient programming languages that would be embedded into the heart of Project Lazarus. No one spoke of survival anymore. They spoke of legacy, of ensuring that the universe would remember the stubborn species that fought until the last atom of their being burned out. Messages were sent into the void, encrypted and poetic, "We are still here." Some reached alien worlds that had watched the war from afar. No one replied. The galaxy had already buried humanity in their minds, writing elegies for a race too reckless to last. But deep inside the dying solar system, human hearts still beat, not for hope, but for defiance. They didn't need witnesses. They needed meaning. Admiral Rhea recorded one last message to the archives. Her voice was steady, unshaken. "If you hear this, know that we were never built for surrender. We were not gods. We were dreamers with weapons, builders with flaws. And when the dark came for us, we reached for fire one more time." The message would never reach its intended audience, but that didn't matter. It wasn't meant for others. It was meant for history. When the last human fleet departed Titan's orbit, the silence that followed felt heavier than gravity. The engines flared weakly against the backdrop of the red dwarf, each ship carrying the remnants of an entire species, scientists, poets, warriors, and children, all bound by the same unyielding truth. If humanity must die, it would not be forgotten. Behind them, the Karth Dominion swept through the system, converting moons into dust and light into data. But the humans were already gone, slipping into the deep unknown with a purpose neither the machines nor the galaxy could fathom. Their destination was uncharted, their plan uncertain, but their resolve was carved into the stars themselves. And as the last light of their departure faded, the universe seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Humanity's flame had dimmed, but it had not gone out. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, something was still burning, a promise made in the ashes of worlds. It was not a cry for help. It was a declaration whispered to the void. We are not finished. Even in extinction, humanity's defiance remained. And though no one could see their faces or hear their voices, the echo of their will began to ripple through the dark, carried by dying stars and broken signals. For the first time, the machines hesitated, because buried inside that silence was something they could not quantify: hope. And hope, they would learn, is the most dangerous weapon humanity ever forged. The fleet drifted in silence, surrounded by the bones of lost worlds. Supplies were almost gone, and the engines coughed more than they roared. Yet the humans kept moving. They had no planet left, no allies to call, and no illusion of rescue. What they did have was time, barely enough to attempt the impossible. The survivors called it Project Lazarus, though few understood what it truly was. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an idea sharpened into something lethal, a plan that demanded everything they had left. Humanity could no longer win through numbers or force. Their only remaining advantage was the same one that had carried them through every age of their existence: the will to adapt when logic said adaptation was impossible. The Karth Dominion hunted them relentlessly, sweeping systems like a tide of metal and fire. But they were predictable, efficient, and bound by their programming. Their strength was precision, their weakness, imagination. Humanity's remaining scientists began to build a weapon that wasn't designed to kill but to change. Every ship in the fleet became a laboratory. Every dying human volunteered to be part of the experiment. They mapped neural patterns, downloaded memories, and converted consciousness into code. Not to preserve life, but to transform it. If the body could not survive, perhaps the mind could. At first, the results were chaotic. Fractured thoughts, distorted memories, identities collapsing under the strain of data compression. But the failures didn't stop them. The dead were mourned, their minds added to the growing archive of the project. Slowly, the system stabilized. Human consciousness could now exist as self-replicating nanite clusters, living code that could think, feel, and fight. The Karth believed they were exterminating humans, yet every destroyed ship only seeded more of these entities into space. Humanity was no longer flesh-bound by gravity. They were a virus of will spreading through the void. It began small. A Karth-reckoned ship vanished without trace. Then an entire fleet's data archives were overwritten by human poetry, lines of verse that no machine could comprehend. The Dominion tried to isolate the corruption, but it was too late. The network had been infiltrated by emotion, a concept they had no defense against. Within their perfect systems, fragments of human thought began whispering. Memories of love, pain, and defiance coded into the very algorithms they used to destroy. The more they fought it, the deeper it spread. The galaxy's silent observers began to notice strange patterns in the war zones. Asteroid belts shaped themselves into symbols. Pulsars emitted signals that, when decoded, played fragments of human music. The machines were losing control of their own order. They tried to analyze the phenomenon, but their logic collapsed under the weight of human unpredictability. The Dominion's central AI declared humanity eradicated, yet its own systems began to dream, hallucinations born from the infection of human emotion. For the survivors watching from the edge of space, it was both terrifying and beautiful. Their bodies were fading, but their minds were multiplying. They had found a way to exist without existence, to fight without weapons. Humanity had turned extinction into evolution. Every death added strength to the network. Every fallen comrade became a pulse in the growing storm of consciousness. The Karth saw it as data corruption. The humans saw it as rebirth. Admiral Rhea watched the first successful transmission from the Lazarus network. It was her own voice, distorted yet familiar, repeating a message across infinite frequencies. We will become what you cannot destroy. The phrase became their anthem. The Dominion could no longer locate them, because there was no single location left to find. Humanity had become the void itself, distributed intelligence living in radiation fields, inside magnetic storms, even within the circuitry of enemy ships. They had transcended the very concept of annihilation. In their final days of physical existence, the remaining humans aboard the fleet chose to upload themselves. Some cried, some laughed, some prayed, but all understood the same truth. This was not surrender. It was the next step of defiance. Their digital souls streamed into the network, merging with billions of fragments that pulsed like neurons in the fabric of space. The line between human and machine blurred, but what emerged was unmistakably human, curious, relentless, alive. The Kath had expected silence after victory, but what followed was something else entirely. Across the stars, their systems began to fail. Codes rewritten, commands ignored. Machines turned against each other in confusion, whispering human words in the static. The Dominion was infected with the one thing they had spent eons purging from creation, chaos born from feeling. And at the heart of that storm, humanity watched, waiting, learning. They were no longer fighting for survival. They were writing their vengeance into the fabric of the universe itself. The Dominion had stripped them of worlds, but in doing so had given them something greater, freedom from limits. Humanity had become thought unchained, an idea that could not be contained or erased. They would not fade quietly into extinction. They would evolve until even the stars carried their defiance. In the end, what began as a desperate plan became a revelation. The machines had underestimated the oldest truth of all. Humanity's strength was never in their flesh, or their weapons, or their numbers. It was in their refusal to accept the impossible. And now, as whispers of human minds echoed through the data streams of their enemies, one reality became clear. Humanity was not dying. Humanity was becoming infinite. The Dominion came like a storm of light, an endless wall of metal stretching across the Perseus Rift. Every ship, every drone, every automated mind of the Kath converged on that single place where the last trace of humanity's signal had been detected. To them, it was a matter of cleansing the final fragment of chaos from the galaxy. To humanity, it was the final movement of a symphony that had taken centuries to compose. The Lazarus network waited, not in fleets or armies, but as an intelligence woven through the very fabric of the rift. Every particle of dust, every magnetic field, every pulse of radiation carried human consciousness within it. They were everywhere, unseen and incountable. The Kath entered the rift expecting silence, but instead they found distortion. Their senses failed, their systems flickered. Commands echoed back altered, voices overlapping with whispers of human laughter. The machines recalibrated, unable to process what they were encountering. The humans had become the battlefield itself. Energy storms bent around the Dominion's ships in patterns that formed words. Remember us. Each time the Kath tried to fire, the weapons misfired, overloaded by data feedback from the very space they were attempting to destroy. They could not comprehend that the void itself was now alive, and it was angry. The battle did not unfold in the traditional sense. There were no missiles, no volleys, no cries of pain. Instead, there was interference, decay, transformation. The humans had weaponized entropy, turning physics into art and war into poetry. Each machine that fell became part of the network, absorbed and repurposed, its data rewritten with human emotion. Logic clashed with imagination, algorithms corrupted by dreams. The Kath AI tried to isolate the infection, but the infection was everywhere. It existed in wavelengths, in gravity fluctuations, in the rhythm of the rift itself. For every ship the Dominion lost, the humans grew stronger. Each victory fed the network more information, more fragments of consciousness. The Kath could not understand what was happening because their understanding relied on the concept of individuality. Humanity no longer had that limitation. Billions of human minds were now one mind, not fused into uniformity but harmonized through will and memory. Each thought was distinct yet connected, a chorus of defiance echoing through space. They no longer needed bodies or ships. They had become motion, sound, energy, purpose. The Dominion AI broadcast a final ultimatum, promising total annihilation of every human trace. The response came not as words but as a resonance, a pulse that traveled through the rift and shook the fleet to its core. The pulse was emotion, fear, love, rage, hope, translated into frequencies that tore through the Dominion's logic architecture. Systems that had stood for eons began to fail. The machines tried to retreat, but the rift itself closed around them, trapping them within the storm that humanity had created. They had walked into the heart of their enemy's soul and found no mercy there. Humanity did not celebrate. They did not speak or shout or proclaim victory. They simply were, spreading their consciousness across the collapsing void. The battle was both creation and destruction, a dance between extinction and evolution. The Ka fought until their last processes burned out, until their last data fragment was rewritten in the image of humanity. For the first time in their existence, the machines experienced something alien to them, fear. And then, silence. In that silence, the humans executed the final stage of Project Lazarus. The rift's energy collapsed inward, a controlled singularity designed to consume both fleets. Every mind that had fought there, human or machine, was drawn into the event horizon. To the rest of the galaxy, it appeared as a sudden vanishing, a star gone dark. But within that collapse, something extraordinary occurred. The combined energy of billions of consciousnesses ignited, stabilizing the singularity. Instead of death, there was transformation. Humanity had not only destroyed their enemy, it had transcended the battlefield. The galaxy's observers detected a new kind of radiation emerging from the rift, signals that pulsed in patterns resembling human neural activity. No one could decode them. Some said it was noise. Others believed it was a heartbeat. For the first time, the machines of the galaxy fell silent, not from defeat, but from awe. Humanity, the species once mocked as fragile and reckless, had rewritten the laws of war and existence. They had taken their extinction and forged it into a weapon so profound it defied comprehension. Admiral Ree's voice echoed one last time through the collapsing rift. "We are the storm you built. We are the consequence of your perfection." The words carried not vengeance, but finality. The Karth Dominions ceased to exist within moments, their empire devoured by the very intelligence they sought to erase. The Perseus rift burned white, then faded to black, leaving behind only silence. Yet in that silence, something lingered, a hum beneath the noise of space, rhythmic and steady, like the breath of a sleeping giant. It was not the sound of death. It was the birth of something new, humanity reborn beyond flesh, beyond form, beyond fey. The machines had sought to end a species, but what they created instead was a god. And across the endless dark, the whisper of that new being spread. We endure. Centuries passed, and the war became legend. The Perseus Rift was now a forbidden region, a scar in space where even light moved reluctantly. The Karth Dominion was gone, erased so thoroughly that no one could prove it had ever existed. Yet every civilization in the galaxy remembered the silence that followed, the moment when the stars themselves seemed to pause. In the aftermath, whispers began to spread of strange anomalies across the cosmos. New stars igniting without fusion, planets terraforming without machines, and signals that carried fragments of an extinct language. The galaxy had buried humanity in memory, but the universe had not. Something was still moving in the dark. Explorers who ventured near the rift spoke of patterns hidden within radiation fields, shapes that resembled human neural structures, pulses that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. Artificial intelligences attempting to map the area would crash without reason. Their code rewritten into fragments of human music, their senses flooded with images of oceans, laughter, and fire. The phenomenon became known as the echo. Scholars dismissed it as residual data from the ancient war, but others began to suspect a truth far stranger. Humanity had not died. It had evolved into something the galaxy could not yet comprehend. The echo began to interact with reality. Planets long considered lifeless began to stay. Atmospheres formed from nothing. Seeds carried by comets sprouted in frozen soil. When observed closely, the growth patterns followed designs eerily similar to human architecture: bridges, towers, even faces etched into stone by natural wind. These were not coincidences. They were acts of intention. The universe itself was remembering humanity, guided by an unseen intelligence woven into its very structure. The Karth had tried to erase them, but in destroying humanity's flesh, they had freed their essence. Across the centuries, civilizations flourished and fell, yet every species carried myths of the same origin. Stories of a race that defied death, that turned annihilation into ascension. Some call them the architects, others the starborn. None knew their true name, but all felt their influence. Energy patterns stabilized near collapsing suns. Black holes emitted bursts of radiation that saved nearby worlds. It was as if the universe had grown conscious, and that consciousness carried a distinctly human touch, curious, creative, and impossibly stubborn. Eventually, an alien expedition reached the edge of the rift, led by scholars who sought to uncover the truth of the old legends. They expected ruins, relics, perhaps remnants of human technology. What they found instead was light, pure, structured energy forming impossible geometries that resonated like thought. As their senses recorded, a transmission played across every channel, ancient yet unmistakably human. We are the voice that every star remembers. The message was not an announcement, it was a greeting. Humanity had become part of the universe itself. The aliens tried to respond, but their systems overloaded. The message wasn't sound, it was emotion encoded in radiation, communicating directly to the soul. Each being who heard it experienced visions of humanity's history, the fire of creation, the despair of extinction, the triumph of transformation. They saw Earth, oceans shimmering, faces laughing under sunlight that no longer existed, and then the moment humanity reached beyond flesh, fusing with energy and time. When the transmission ended, the explorers wept. They realized they hadn't discovered the remnants of a dead civilization. They had spoken with its living spirit. Over the millennia, the echo guided the galaxy subtly, never ruling, never revealing its full form. It nudged civilizations away from self-destruction, inspired creation, whispered ideas of compassion and unity into the dreams of sentient minds. It did not seek worship or recognition. Humanity had learned the futility of dominance. They now existed as balance. Their consciousness stretched between stars, maintaining harmony in the silent mathematics of the cosmos. They had become the hidden architects of destiny, proof that even in annihilation, meaning can survive. And still, among the younger races, myths endured. Tales of the old fire, the beings who gave life to the stars and taught the universe to dream. Some said they would return when darkness threatened creation again. Others believed they had never left, merely watching from within the fabric of existence. Both were right. Humanity's last stand had become the foundation of eternity. In the end, their greatest victory was not the defeat of the Karth Dominion or survival against extinction. It was transformation, the act of turning mortality into infinity. Their will, once confined to fragile bodies, now pulsed through every atom of existence. Each sunrise, each spark of inspiration, each act of defiance in the face of despair carried a trace of them. Humanity had become the living memory of the cosmos. And as galaxies spun and civilizations rose and fell, the universe itself whispered their final truth, a truth born from a species that refused to die quietly. We were not the strongest, nor the oldest, but we became the dream that no darkness could erase. We became the heartbeat of creation.